Okay, everybody, thank you. At 6:01, we will be opening the general meeting of the North Plains Budget Committee for the 25 fiscal year 25-27 biennium budget process. Let's all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pardon me for a moment. I'm missing, we're missing a close count.
Okay. Perfect. Attendance. For this meeting, you're all commissioners. Not counselors, no, anybody, okay. Commissioner Dumbrow,
Present.
Commissioner Page,
Here.
Commissioner Goodwin,
Here.
Commissioner Hagedorn. Here. Commissioner McCall Wallace. Here. Commissioner Pippin. Present. Commissioner Redding. Here. Commissioner Barron.
Present.
Commissioner Fry. Here. Commissioner Hurst. Here. Commissioner Murdoch.
Here.
And Commissioner Larry Gonzalez and David Hatcher are both excused this evening.
Okay. I look forward to not having to do much more in terms of beginning the meeting, so I'm looking forward to turning this over. So, just kind of the next step is we need you all to pick your officers, your committee chair and your committee vice chair to serve in case the chair can't make it to a meeting or whatever. Here's how it'll work. Here in just a moment, I'll say, can I hear any nominations for the position of Budget Committee Chair? And you're welcome to nominate whoever on the committee you like. Budget Committee is kind of a funny, weird thing. It's a highly prescribed committee and what it does by state of Oregon budget law. And so we have 7 city councilors, including the mayor, who by being elected to city council have seats at this committee. But then we have an equal number, as you know, residents at large. And the state sets this process up so that you all have kind of equal, equal status or kind of equal voice, that sort of thing. So we have city council on the committee, but at the same time, you all are kind of equals in terms of figuring out who you want as chair and all that fun stuff. So I will ask for nominations for committee chair. Lori will record who has been nominated. If anybody wants to decline the nomination, they're welcome to. And once we've settled on the final nominations, we will just ask who votes for this nominee, count votes.
No second is required.
Yeah, exactly. There's no second.
You
It's
just
just,
nominate and that's it.
Oh,
And write
exactly.
down whoever you nominate. Well, if we have 12 nominees. 12 nominees.
Point of order, point of order, this term is for how long? This.
This-
Only?
this term is for this biennium, correct? Yeah, like the committee terms are longer, but this is for this
The
biennium.
chairs for biennium. So through 2027.
Correct, thank you. No second. Then we will call for vote and nominee by nominee, and whoever gets the most votes is the committee chair. Then we will turn this meeting over to the new committee chair, providing whatever assistance. And the committee chair will run a similar vote, but for vice chair.
And the committee chair and the vice chair is the back, the committee chair runs the meeting as far as so the agenda goes and also the pace.
Yes, the committee chair will run the meeting. That's it, like a chair of any other board or committee that we have, that's correct.
Actually, they would take over the nomination for the vice chair process.
Well, that's what, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I said, yeah,
And then
correct.
you can do it.
Yeah, then I get to be talking stuff, not process. Any questions about that? Okay. At this point, on behalf of the budget committee, I will entertain nominations for chair of the budget committee for this biennium.
I nominate Cindy Hurst. I just raise your hand.
We're all waiting.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, Commissioner McCollum.
Yeah, I want to say that, in Oregon, this is unique to Oregon. Not every state does this. That puts, community members on the budget committee. And so in honor of that and in sort of, and our, council priorities for access and community, I'd like to nominate a community person also, Chris Barron. Commissioner.
I would like to decline the chair position, please.
Okay, so
Okay.
Commissioner Hurst is declining her nomination.
Got it.
Anybody else? Commissioner Pittman.
I also was gonna nominate Commissioner Barron.
Okay, two nominations, very good. Commissioner Barron, any decline or anything like that? You're okay?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay.
Stiff competition, guys.
So competition. Okay, so simple, majority vote, all in favor of Commissioner Barron being the chair of the North Plains Budget Committee for the 25-27 biennium budget process.
Can we stop for a second? I didn't know if we have a hand voting available or not, so since we have a commissioner online, to make sure that we've got, if there's anything coming from there.
Thank you, Commissioner McCall Wallace. Commissioner Goodwin, did you have any nominee or anything along those lines?
Appreciate you checking. Yeah, I'm not able to raise hands online, so let's go ahead and just proceed with the vote and I can voice vote.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so all in favor of Commissioner Barron being the chair of the North Plains Budget Committee for the 25-27 biennium budget process. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Votes approved. Commissioner Barron is chair of the Budget Committee.
And you're all done.
And I'm
Did a great job.
Well done, I thank you. Really.
All right, next order of business is electing the vice chair. So do we hear any nominations for electing a vice chair? Don't everyone jump at once. Yeah. Oh, I've been waiting for this.
You stick it if we didn't show up.
Yeah,
That's the-
I can nominate as well. We got two over here. Oh, perfect. Lisa?
If she's willing to accept it, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Hurst.
I don't mind vice chair, but chair is a little bit more than I can handle, so
I was gonna go in the same direction.
thank you. I appreciate that, Lisa.
So we have a nomination for Cindy Hurst as vice chair. We hear any others? All right, we'll go ahead and move to a vote.
Oh, you want to ask?
Oh, yes.
She can't raise her hand.
Sorry about
That's
that.
right.
Will you please unmute?
Did you just leave her
Yeah, can we just leave her on mute?
Well, she's reading
Oh.
herself.
Ariel, if we just unmuted that would help.
I am not in a space that you guys are wanting to hear everything in the background. I'm still at the hospital. But thank you, James.
Hearing no other nomination, let's go ahead and move for a vote. All in favor for Cindy Hurst as vice chair of the budget committee? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next order of business, public comment. Do we have any public comments submitted before time?
No, didn't receive anything prior to the meeting or tonight.
Perfect. Do we have any folks in the audience or online that have public comments submitted at this time? Oh, you guys are making this too easy for the first one. All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move down to our next agenda item that we have, public comment guidelines. Do we want to cover that? Oh, that is right, guys. I already screwed up. Small screen approval of the minutes from over a year ago. Do we have a motion to approve the May 15th, 2024 budget committee meeting minutes? I'll move to approve.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Let's get back to it. I like to keep things moving. General Budget Committee meeting covering. So this is where we're getting to next. Budget laws and city budgeting priorities and management or orientation. Bill, I take it you're probably gonna be sharing a lot of information during this time?
That is correct, Chair. I have a PowerPoint presentation, I'm afraid, so, what good is a budget committee? Well, no, this is,
Please let him show it. He's worked awfully hard on it.
this, the budget committee meeting PowerPoints are the truly dreadful things. This is minor, so let me make sure it's fired up.
You're really selling it.
Well, I'm not here to shill for Microsoft or.
I think you broke Adobe.
I think maybe I did. Right, reopen it.
Would you all like it if I turned off another bank of lights, or are you good with this, or another one off?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yes?
That way we can see the fine print.
Bill, I think if you go back and make it bigger, there was the arrow, and I'll get.
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again?
Go to the very top on the right and hit the square, up one,
Oh.
and then down, right below that, there's the double-sided arrow.
Right there.
Yeah. that should-
Okay, I was thinking there at the bottom, but that's at the bottom of PowerPoint, not Adobe, okay. All right, so let me, actually, I'm gonna have to redo this because I gotta share the screen, sorry.
Yeah.
Share the screen. This. And. Okay. Here we
Can our
go.
folks online see? Thumbs up.
Oh, they don't have.
Thank you for
Oh.
double checking. It just popped up.
Very good, okay. Okay, I just have, a variety of things, it's gotten dark in here. I've got just a variety of things to walk through. This is really just meant to be, for those of you who have been through the budget process, there's a few. Been through the budget process before for the city, it's been a while, we do it every 2 years. And there's kind of some this and that about it, as well as we just kind of wanted to walk through what the budget committee does. And process. So first off, members, no good place for that. Here's our 14 members, including elected officials on the left-hand side, and all of the citizen at large members on the right-hand side. Thanks everybody for being involved. There is a current vacancy, and City Council on Monday, the 5th, will hear from various applicants for the vacant position and is expected to select a person to be filling the vacant position this coming Monday. So with that selection, that person will be added to the roster here and will be part of your first formal budget process meeting as a committee to review a budget on the 15th. So just kind of an update.
Will we also send this presentation to them to kind of cram homework? in?
Absolutely, and as well as all the links to different state, League of Oregon City, and
Just pretty much this should be.
yeah, this will help a lot. I agree with you. Thank you, Commissioner Page.
Well, this will be included in the minutes as well, won't it?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So we'll talk a little bit about what budget committee does and what its job is, the statute involved, all that fun stuff. And so really kind of the left-hand side of this just walks through the very basics of what a budget committee does. Oregon Revised Statute, ORS Chapter 294 is pretty prescriptive and detailed in terms of committees, what they do, what the budget process is, what the budget officer or the city manager in this case has to do, and then, it's pretty rigorously set in terms of how things work. There are, a budget committee kind of makes some choices about different things, but by and large, the process is really prescriptive. But you all get to receive the new budget document, hear from the community about it, consider it, comment, ask for any revisions you find necessary or recommend. And then when all is said and done, reach agreement on approval of the budget with whatever modifications were recommended to be made. And then you also approve the property tax rate that's necessary for council to adopt in order to realize the budget being adopted. And that's actually two different things that city council does when they adopt the budget. When the approved budget by this committee is sent to city council, and the approved property tax rate, city council has to then adopt the budget by resolution and adopt the property tax rate that, that should be in line with what the budget committee approved. The maximum property tax rate that North Plains can levy is $2.17 per thousand. That's the maximum permanent rate. Permanent rate levy that North Plains has and can levy against property value in the city. I'm not aware of the city ever levying anything less because North Plains' permanent rate that we have is among the lowest in the Portland metro region, certainly among cities in Washington County. So it's a very modest property tax rate, and we don't have a local option levy, which means we don't have something that gets optionally approved or reapproved by voters every 5 years. That's our permanent rate, and it's modest. So city council gets to approve, approve up to the maximum property tax rate when they adopt that resolution in June as well. Basically the schedule, May 8th, this is when the budget next Thursday is when the proposed full budget for both the city and the Urban Renewal Agency will be released to you all. On May 15th, the following week, on Thursday, 1 week later, will be your first formal budget committee meeting under Oregon revised statute that sets out this very specific schedule and requirements for the first meeting included, which has to include the budget and the budget message. There's actually a formal message in the beginning of the budget, kind of goes on for a couple pages usually. It's actually a statutory required component of the budget in the budget hearing process. So that will certainly be among the topics covered at the first budget meeting on the 15th. We currently have 2 additional meetings for a total of 3 for the budget process to work through the numbers and coming to ultimately an approval. The following week on May 22nd, and finally a week later, May 29th. Each being a successive Thursday to avoid other meetings during the month. After whatever point of those meetings, or however many of those meetings, the committee votes on approval of the budget, and council needs to receive an approved budget. I have the date wrong. This is actually June 6th. No, it's actually, is it June? Could you confirm those dates for me? I might not have updated these dates for 2025. But either way, we'll get that fixed. But at the first at the first city council meeting, we'll have resolutions of adoption for the budget.
No, that's right. The first meeting in June,
Yeah,
the second.
okay, I updated.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, I wasn't.
Yep, we're good.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori. Council will have to adopt the budget by resolution and then approve some resolutions that adopt a few other resolutions, including that property tax rate adoption for the coming fiscal year on July 1, as well as city council also has to pass a couple of resolutions that make it possible for us to actually get shared revenues from the state. We have to demonstrate with a resolution that we do a number of services as a city that qualify us for those shared revenues. And then council also has to adopt a resolution that says we elect to receive those revenues. And since all those revenues go into our general fund unrestricted revenue category and help fund all of our departments, it's a pretty important set of resolutions in June too. By June 30th, council must adopt a budget by state law. And then at some point after a budget adoption by the 15th, the adopted budget gets filed with the county clerk over at Washington County, and the property tax levy resolution gets passed on to the county assessor as well, and they certify that. So that's the process. A lot of detail in there, but those are kind of the big milestone key things. Any questions about that? Commissioner Hurd?
Sorry. When, in the process, when will the budget need to be, published
It,
in paper?
well, we'll have notice going out of the budget committee, the first formal budget committee meeting. We're sending that notice to the paper tomorrow morning. So we'll,
Okay.
so,
I'm talking about the budget that goes to the city council for their approval.
that will get noticed. We have to send it out 2 weeks prior?
Yes,
I mean, it gets
Sorry,
published in the
no, it
paper.
doesn't have-
Oh, yeah. We have to publish
we've got a
that,
calendar.
Right, the full budget.
Yeah.
That's what I was
the
wondering.
full
Thank you.
approved budget, yep.
That
It
was
was
my
2
question.
weeks before, so we have to discuss it June 2nd. That's gonna be when they short.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 2 full weeks. It's normally, actually, I think it can be as short as 5 days, but we get it out
So
before that.
June 16th was so good. Okay.
Yeah.
We get it out.
That's what I was wondering because we kind of
It's,
pushed tight.
we're compressed, yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it is a little bit compressed. But you know, we'll get it in, but yes, bottom line is we'll notice both, the release of the proposed budget, and we'll publish notice the city council meeting about it too. Okay,
Quick question, and my apologies if I wasn't able to hear this. What opportunities do we have to help socialize this out to the community through various city channels?
good question. So, we'll newspaper notice it, make it available on the city website, we'll push it on socials, we'll push it in, newsletter, we'll push it in, I mean, basically our standard channels that we do have. There are, I mean, you know, if there's other ideas for having any kind of discussion of, how to push it with, any kind of, what's the word I'm looking
Other
for?
sources.
The other sources that, we're welcome to do that. But that's, those are kind of the tools at our disposal.
Thank you so much.
Yep, sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna walk through a number of League of Oregon Cities slides, just to kind of discuss budget committee, what it does and everything that we're doing. So here are your official duties. Kind of getting back to that, reviewing the budget, taking in public comment and questions about the budget, making sure that a budget is approved with all of the funds in balance. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then again, approving the maximum amount of property taxes that you recommend for city council to adopt by resolution, as we said before. Budget committee is really about the budget and the property tax rate at the end of the day. So it's actually not by state law for the budget committee to get into the finer details of things, setting the salaries, staff levels, benefits, all that fun stuff. That's a city management issue. Whether or not a service or program should be provided, or kind of this committee setting policy. City council's our policy committee. And so, but this committee is really about the budget around those things, policies and priorities, and we'll get into those before long. You all are welcome to contact me. We have senior staff, we have directors here who are heavily involved in a number of parts of the budget for the different departments and funds that they're involved in. So between the three of us in particular, as well as chief, representing Washington County Sheriff's Office on contract costs in the coming fiscal year and after the second year of the biennium. We welcome comments, questions, and asks for additional information. It's critical that we do get any of those questions sooner rather than later, so that we can kind of come back to you. If you've been through the budget committee process before, you'll note that we take all questions and comments extremely seriously, noting every single question or comment, how we responded, who responded to it in terms of, was it a Dustin question or a Bill question or a chief question, and then what the response is as we go through. That's why I say the PowerPoint presentations for budget committee meetings are not my favorite thing in the world, but you know, we want to make sure that we get everything in and we detail all of the response to it. It's super important. So please do ask questions and get clarifications and email us, you know, in between meetings, of course. So, but earlier is better, of course. This is subject to Oregon Public Meetings Law. But Budget Committee actually has extra rules on top of that, regarding, you know, how you work together and how the meetings, you know, what happens in them. Technically speaking, and then there's another slide about this, but I'll talk a bit about it now. On May 8th, when the budgets are released to you all in the public, you as a committee are not actually allowed to talk to each other at all, individually even, communicate with each other even individually, about the budget and its numbers. That communication has to wait for open communication in this committee meeting venue. It's weird. Other committees, you're not supposed to meet, a quorum is not supposed to meet, right? Whether it's a serial meeting, you know, person to person to person, or together in the same room or what have you. This one is actually even more strict. You can't individually communicate with each other about the proposed budget. You have to have all that conversation in this room as a committee. Counselor, Commissioner Fagich.
Yeah, somebody, now I play devil's advocate here because
Yeah.
there's some tomfoolery that's happening a little bit, I think. Can somebody from the outside, somebody talk to somebody from the outside, that person from the outside can talk to somebody else and then somebody else and create a chair meeting or a chair meeting?
No.
It would
It's
not be
not,
public.
it's not people doing it, but back and forth.
Yeah.
Like, you know, share with somebody from that's maybe online watching it or someone that's
Yeah.
watching it. And that person.
No, I mean, that ends up being basically a similar type of serial meeting situation.
Okay,
Um,
so somebody that's,
So advice and guidance would be, this would be great for public comment. We'd love to see you at the next meeting.
yeah, that's a good way.
That's a good way to
put it.
Yeah.
And so just don't even discuss it. Just, this will be great for public comment. Here's our next meeting. Here's how you get submitted. Let's move forward.
Very good. No, thank you. Good question. So League of Oregon Cities kind of has some guidelines for your first meeting. You've already elected officers. That's great. So technically speaking, this meeting is not part of the formal budget review process by this committee because the budget hasn't been released yet. This is just a general orientation meeting ahead of time, and you got to get a lot of information out of the way that at the first meeting tends to make the meeting run way too long. So that's part of it, is to help kind of the focus at the first formal meeting on the 15th. But you've elected officers. I would recommend at your first formal meeting, you all adopt rules of order. At this point, there's no requirement in terms of how long an individual person's public comment is, any of that stuff. You know, if you're on council, if you're on an existing committee, you should have bylaws that kind of guide those things. We have no bylaws here. So some basic rules would be in order, and staff can go out and bring back to you examples of budget committee specific rules that aren't nearly as extensive, but you know, but kind of guide, you know, Robert's Rules of Order and you know, other things. But we can bring back some things for you, but that would be a good thing for you to do. And then again, the budget message, I mean, the full budget will be released, but that formally required budget message talking about the context of the budget and everything going into it, you'll get to hear. And then you all actually have the power. We talked about a schedule earlier on, but you all do have the power to modify the schedule. It's really yours to set as a committee. We have recommended a schedule to avoid other city boards and bodies meetings on Thursdays leading to June. But if you choose, you can, as a body, by consensus or majority vote, say, I don't like that. We don't like that day. We prefer this day. You can do that. So we can get to that. We get to that at an appropriate time. And then at your first meeting, to be clear, public comment, public input is actually not required. You can hear everything from me and staff about the proposed budget and reserve for a second or later meeting the actual public input part of it. Up to you as a committee. If you want to hear at the first meeting, just go through everything and ask any of your own questions, you can. And then based on what the public heard at the meeting, letting the second meeting be, when you get input and, you know, their feedback and your questions feed theirs or what they bring in comment, you can do it that way. But it's not required to have, public input at the first meeting.
Question.
yeah.
If we were to decide to do that, to defer to second meeting, how do we communicate that to the public?
We'll have it in the notice, and everything about on social media about the budget on the website will kind of lay out what happens at each meeting based on how this council, how this body has decided.
I just want to add to that quickly that, we were asked to go to the, Department of Revenue budget training. And when they laid that out, sort of said, you know, there is sort of the bigger, hey, this is the public comment hearing time kind of thing that goes out as that message. So, and it is on the agenda that goes out to people and the notification.
Yeah, I mean,
And the post our meeting.
thank you, Commissioner McCollum. Anybody else on that point? It is for you as a body to decide at the end of the day. Okay.
A question about public comment. Could it be any citizen of the United States or can we limit to people that live inside North Plains tax?
Set the rules.
area?
Well, by law, anybody can comment.
Oh, please.
So if some advocacy group out of Washington DC doesn't like elephant garlic, they can comment. Okay, it's an example. You know what I mean? Yeah, but we have to let any comment in. Commenters can be asked to say where they're from.
Yeah.
But we can't divide or treat differently.
My personal recommendation, and this is for the commission to decide, would be to have no public comment at the first meeting. It is truly information where we're gathering all the information. I mean, we're not even gonna have a lot of comment. It is so much of drinking from a fire hose at that point that we should all drink from the fire hose, go home, process, allow folks to sit in and listen. It's a listening session. And then our next meeting is where discussion happens. And if we keep it that targeted to Commissioner Wallace's point, then we have a greater chance of being very clear and concise on when the public can be here to make comment. Whereas if we say every meeting has public comment, the problem is people are going to come at the wrong time, have wrong comments. And so I think if we take a very laser focused approach, here's where comment is going to occur. We will have the most input from everyone. It'll be very clear when that input is to be received.
Commissioner Barrett, I think when you said wrong comment, you didn't mean people making wrong comments.
Yeah.
You meant comments that wouldn't be relevant because we've already moved past that. or
Correct.
something, you know, in terms of what's happening in the meeting.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, my perspective on this is that the community has requested transparency and input, and I think from a First Amendment standpoint, we need to make as much opportunity available and not expect people to attend multiple meetings when we're asking them to come join one that they normally wouldn't attend. So that's my personal opinion on that.
We go on to the site tonight.
Actually, Chair,
We do.
well, for us
Put it out.
to properly notice this and get the information out, that would be a good thing to be able to characterize what happens in future meetings wouldn't be a bad thing.
Okay.
Do this at the end of the meeting?
So we can do this, yeah, we can do this at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's continue through, and then at the end, let's discuss it as a commission and decide. Back to you, sir.
Commissioner Pippin?
I'll table it till the end,
Okay.
Iris. Thank you.
Okay, you all get to establish your rules. You've already made appointments on officers. Let's see. So you kind of have already talked about this topic, but you know, with the proper process that you've determined when, you know, what happens at the first meeting, when comment happens, if it's the first, if it's only, and if it's also at the first, if it's only later, what have you. That's a helpful thing, and so Chair Barron kind of talked about some of the benefit of all that, so I won't, you know, being organized with all this, won't belabor that point. So one thing I just kind of want to be kind of careful and clear about is this body, when it approves a budget, and it gets sent on to city council. City council ultimately is the formal approval body for a budget. And so if, for whatever reason, they hear more comment, economic circumstances change, I think we can all agree, day-to-day economic news yes, is pretty prominent in the news. And things seem to change a lot here and there about different things, and so you know, substantively, if there's something substantively that might change how to think about the budget, city council's budget, it's a hearing process for them too, and they approve the budget. But one thing to keep in mind about that is that we're not, you know, the guarantee of any forecast of anything is it's going to be wrong. We aren't going to nail this with any sense of perfection. And the nice thing about Oregon budget law is, on the one hand, you gotta have a budget adopted by June 30th by city council. But at the same time, if conditions change, something very different happens, at any point after that, we can do supplemental budgets to change the budget. Additional money comes in unexpected, whatever. You know, there's an emergency suddenly, you know, something blows up and we need to use contingency money to help pay for whatever. There are changes and updates that can happen and be done by city council after the budget is adopted. So there's pressure to get a good, strong, input driven and responsive budget adopted, but there's no pressure to get it perfect, thinking we don't have the flexibility and ability to modify later on to meet the needs of the community and circumstances that are known. So just to be clear about that. Anything else? I mean, I don't know that council is going to approve a even higher tax rate than what this body approves. If it's below, and who knows? But we're limited at $2.17 permanent rate. So that's not a very high tax rate. So that issue isn't really a big deal for this community. Some cities that have a higher permanent rate as a result of Measure 50 in the 90s actually do choose to only levy a certain amount. This city has never had a permanent rate. Its permanent rate's been $2.17 since the late 90s. So it doesn't have much to work with. So there is that. And then during the city council process of adoption, as well as later on with any supplemental budgets, you all do have the right and even responsibility to show up, hear it, and kind of speak about it too. So keep that in mind, that once you've approved a budget and set it on the city council, your job isn't done. The other thing I would say is that halfway through the biennium, sometime in 2026, there's kind of an informational budget committee meeting to kind of go over what's been happening, where things are. And we actually have some things that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, but we'll factor more into our discussion at the next budget committee meeting about some substantial changes in how potentially substantial changes in how one of our departments is funded. So a time will come with this budget to do it this way, but later on, potentially significant changes. So for that department. So we'll get into that. Okay, just a bit about, as you've looked through the current budget or past budgets, you'll probably notice very prescriptive elements on every single page that's required by state law. Every budget for every department, every fund needs to have common components that are, kind of tracked and summarized. Personnel services has to be delineated by itself. All the cost of having employees, from their salary to their benefits, taxes, overtime, all that fun stuff, that all has to be in a personnel services category in the budget. And some level of detail leading to it, to show the math. Materials and services is the next component. Everything we spend on contractors, supplies, anything not personnel, and also not a significant capital outlay, everything in between. And then capital outlay is a category for all departments and funds that we have to report if it exists. That's everything basically over $5,000 in value, kind of an asset. And so some funds definitely do that, water fund, streets fund, those sorts of things, but operating departments and funds don't tend to do capital outlay quite as much. So you'll see that, but we have to have that category delineated in the budget information. And then debt service for funds that do have debt. We do have to show in detail, what those budgeted, expenditures are going to be, but those are all scheduled with the debt service payment schedule, so we know that in advance. That's not something that we have to guess and try to figure out what it'll be in the future. We know what it is. And we only have, I think at this point, 3 debt issues at the city at all. And we'll get into that, with the, in the budget process. And here are the final things you see kind of closer to the bottom of every budget page. Contingency, these get a little bit technical. Contingency is basically an amount of money that in a budget gets approved and then adopted that amounts to pre-authorized spending for unexpected circumstances. So as an example, there was a year where our vac truck, somebody broke into a yard, stole our vac truck, drove it off, and wrecked it pretty badly. Insurance covered the vehicle, but in some of the repair of it and repair of the fence and yard and all that. And then we had a tree fall one year and do some damage to something that, insurance covered, but some of it was not. Those are truly unforeseen things. And so contingency is the line item that we go to and say, here's the pre-authorized spending, it's for unforeseen emergency. This is the appropriate way to handle that expenditure because we kind of already set up an amount for it. So that's what that is. Any questions about contingency? Let's pre-authorized spending. Okay. The next 2 categories are kind of similar and get grouped together, but it gets a little weird. Reserve for future expenditure. That's a set aside, particularly important for our operating fund, particularly general fund. That's just sort of like a pre-set aside targeted spending amount. In the general fund, very specifically, what we do is we have a reserve for future expenditure equal to an estimated amount of property tax in order to basically have this savings in case there's any weird flow problem, which has never happened, but in case there's any weird flow problem with property taxes from the county, we have kind of this savings account that's set aside to just in case of. But that's basically what that is. And then unappropriated ending fund balance is just kind of the reserve, the reserves, the true reserves of that fund. Just what's not spent and is set aside and planned to be rolled over for future budget cycles for whatever reason. So that's kind of your real reserves of that operating or capital fund. Subtle differences, but yeah, go ahead.
Are there specific percentages that are required by Oregon statute in those areas?
Honestly, it's not really. It's kind of up to best practices of or the choice of the community and how it wants to budget. It just needs to have those in there. Different, unappropriated ending fund balance, that's all over the place. There's no recommended best practice, but some cities for their general fund will have 10 to 15%. Others will have well north of 20 if they're just really conservative, but there's no like statute, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, but you do need to have these in place.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, and the more reserves you have in place, it looks better on your credit and all that fun stuff too, so. Okay. All right, so this gets into a little bit of the specifics for how the city budgets. So since 2021, we've been doing what's called expenditure control budgeting. If you Google that, you probably won't find anything national or anything, but there is the term, the method of budgeting, at least in Oregon, it's called expenditure control budgeting. And it's really kind of a common practice that was advocated for and became really common due to the finance director, later city manager, and then city manager in a number of different places of Lake Oswego. And this was years ago. But the idea was, people really don't like, well, if you look at city budgeting and public budgeting, as you approach the end of the fiscal year or the biennium, most budgets, the way they work is you budget based on the previous year's budget, and how much was spent, and then you project a bit more the following year. And if you don't spend your money in that budget cycle, it doesn't count towards the budget for the following year. So there's actually pressure to spend money at the end, towards the end of the emergency spend money, at the end of the budget cycle, at the end of the year or the biennium. The expenditure control budgeting, methodology doesn't do that. It lets cities, it lets department directors, save money. Instead of budgeting based on how much you, strictly speaking, or more so based on how much you actually realized in spending the year before and use it or lose it. Departments' funds are allowed to actually plan on saving that money, rolling it forward, earning interest on it, and encouraging saving for certain things. And as my recollection goes, when we implemented the first expenditure control budget in FY 21, we found about immediately an 18% decrease in spending because of the end of use it or lose it. Departments and funds, we could basically plan for things to be rolled over, and department directors actively chose to save the money for future things. So we continue to honor that approach and continue to do that approach with expenditure control budgeting. So also what comes with that is that we don't worry so much about individual line items and expense line items. So when you get the budget, you're gonna see all kinds of individual accounts and, this supplies, that professional services, printing, janitorial, all that stuff. Under this system, we budget for each of those things. You get to review it. It's part of your approval, but the emphasis isn't on each of those individual line items. The system gives directors and city manager the flexibility to hit those broad categories. Remember, we were talking about personnel expense, materials and services, capital equipment spending. Those summary numbers are the important ones to target for meeting budget, not worrying about being under budget on every single expense line item. Something comes up, that expense line item is over budget for the biennium, but you make up for it by being careful about other lines. So that's the idea, is the net personnel expense, the net materials and supplies, the net capital equipment line items are the ones you target for meeting budget, and you work with flexibility in between the individual expense accounts during the course of the year.
So we did this for 4 years, so this will be our 4th year doing this now.
Mhm.
I know you said that so the problem with the line item, when you use it or lose it, you are forced to spend the budget or they get less next year. This way, the budget's set and it starts fresh every year. There's no opportunity to come in under budget because that budget stays with the department. So have we seen, we have a net, it's a net zero. There's no possibility of coming in under budget with this.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I mean, you come under budget, but you just keep it. So the net is gonna always be the same. We don't get extra money for next year to spend as we wish. It stays with the department, right?
well, no, no, I mean, you get to save your money and it counts towards balance forward for your department or fund. So, I mean, the library has done this consecutively for a few years. Coming in under budget overall, your expenditure is below budget, so your ending department balance for the year is better than was budgeted. And so that net increase in savings gets moved to be the beginning department balance the following new budget cycle, and that gives the department the ability to budget.
What I'm trying to say is, say this city has $100.
Uh-huh,
Each department has 20 cents to spend.
uh-huh.
The department spends that with this budgeting, the dollar spent. There's a possibility of having the city have 2 cents extra to use as they will next year.
Sure.
It stays the dollar spent, 100% spent. So there's no possibility of getting that extra 2 cents back, right? Because if there's a dollar spent, each department gets, to make simple, 20 cents each, 20%. If they come in at 50%, they can keep that and add it as a bonus to the next year.
Right.
That 5 cents or whatever change that is, doesn't go back to the city for next year. Okay, we came under budget. We have an extra this much money. now we want to do parks or whatever we want to do, right? We don't have extra nickels pit anywhere we want. That nickel's been spent in electing the one department.
Well, I mean,
That's the only.
So- well, I mean, it's on a department basis. So like, for example, let's say the library brings their spending in over the budget cycle, 18 cents of the 20.
Mhm.
And their ending fund balance is 2 cents more, 20 cents, 2 cents more than was budgeted. The city overall spent less money because it was saved. The following budget cycle, that extra 2 cents adds to the beginning department budget. So the city actually saved money. And then in the next budget cycle, it's up to the department and ultimately the budget approval. That department can continue to save that for something in the future. Or add to that. So the city did save money because the library didn't spend quite as much that year, and then it may or may not spend it the following budget.
Right, but
cycle.
does it go back into the budget for fresh use? It stays with that
It
department.
stays within.
It says the part, yeah, it says the part.
So I'm just wondering if that's a net gain or just, you know.
Well, I mean, if you look, I guess the bottom line is that if the library knew that it really needed to buy a new widget in a future year, it saved that money to do that and can do it without other departments who share all those funds being affected. Like, you know, there's extra resources for that thing to be bought. And so if they hadn't have saved it in the following budget year, all the departments would have to split the money the same way, but because the library saved that money, the other departments don't have to split the money quite the same way, if that makes sense.
I just want to add, familiar with both and programming, and so, yes, it doesn't come back to, and when you say to the city, it is in the city still, the library is in the city, all
Right.
city.
I'm talking about
But
cash
let's
flow.
say the library needs a $4,000 widget and only can budget $2,000 for it. They know that they can do that, and it will take 2 cycles to get there, essentially, to get their $4,000 widget. It's not like at the end of the year, they save that $2,000 hoping to get that, but in comes the big sweep, takes all the money back to the central source at the general fund, or gets redistributed, which often in that situation would get redistributed to those who were running high on their budgets or over on their budgets, unfortunately. And so this created a more equitable sharing of and financial responsibility for those individual directors. All the same amount of money either way, though.
Yeah. No, that's a good thing.
Shouldn't be that
Commissioner
much.
Harris.
I just want to relay something about zero-based budgeting, which is kind of what the opposite of this. Herb worked for 35 years in the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon, they have an annual budget. And every year in May, they spent as much money as they could that was left over in their budget. Because the legislature would have taken away any extra dollars and would have reduced their budget the following year by those extra dollars to start with. This is more sane than what the state of Oregon is doing, and it continues to do that after all these years. So, and the other thing is they would buy things that they didn't need, because then what happens is they could return them after the
Oh, wow.
and credit come back. I mean, they knew how to use the system. This way, it encourages the managers to balance their budget with the funds they have and be very conservative and buy smartly. So I think this is a great way to do it. And when Bill introduced this a couple of years ago, I thought it was great. So.
It makes bank reconciliations more complicated.
Yeah.
Because we've got to assign interests to the departments that are saving.
Right.
But that's actually an important point is, if departments are saving money, depending on how much they're saving, they're also earning interest. And so that is kind of new income that wouldn't have happened otherwise. It's not gigantic, depending on department or fund. But yeah, assigning interest earned is a far more complicated process now, especially with moving funds back and forth and making, saving money versus paying bills, so, right? Okay, this will be our third biennial budget. We've we've been through, biennial budget, of course, is a 2 fiscal year budget. It's in, 2 annual budgets. The biennial budgets each time, we don't go through the process of estimating a 2-year period. There are actually 2 annual budgets that you don't see. And then they get summed together. And so in the budget documents that you see, there's, in them, there's an approved column, a proposed column, approved column, and an adopted column. Those are the 2-year period, the 2-year summary of hidden annual columns that you don't see. So for a city like North Plains, that's actually pretty important because 1 year things can be changes in growth or changes that happen for a smaller community. That's dramatic percentage changes sometimes. And so it really is important to take a look at 2 annual budgets and not think about it purely as a hypothetical 2-year period. So that's kind of an important thing for North Plains in particular. This is kind of a fine point. We have to produce, actually by state law, each budget sheet also has to show the 2 prior years, 2 prior budget periods in past experienced information. This year will be the last year where we have an annual budget period. So fiscal year 21 will be the last annual kind of realized budget figure, the set of budget figures and all the budget sheets. Then it's FY 21-23 after that. And again, you all will gather in April of 2026 to kind of do take a pulse on where things have been. And then there will be some planned sizable updates on some programs and things. So we'll get into that later. This is a sheet I put together for Andy to demonstrate when we introduced the expenditure control budgeting. I like to say this is the blood spatter exhibit. But the bottom line is that just a few key things, and we'll get into that. And that is that the general fund, all the departments that you kind of associate with the operations of the city, library, police, community development, all those fun things. Those are all general fund operating departments. And so the general fund has a bunch of different revenue streams that are called unrestricted revenue, property taxes, franchise fees, and those shared revenues from the state that that council adopts resolutions to approve. Getting money from the state, those go into that category as well. And it's a ton of money for the general fund. That's the main source of revenue, those big revenue sources. A few other smaller ones too. But each of the departments have to split that based on, kind of priorities and service priorities and budgeting priorities. Each of those different departments share that unrestricted revenue in terms of a percentage of that, a pie slice. And so that each department, you'll see that number, that information. So that's kind of the first step. Based on priorities, each department gets its pie slice, and we show very clearly where that is in the department budgets now. All the budget expenditures and revenues you see in the budget, even though the columns are hidden, are 2-year figures. And then you can kind of see how there are, the mouse isn't working. Like right here, you can kind of see how each department can kind of calculate and affect an ending fund balance that can be rolled into the following year in the next budget cycle. And then as you can see, interest is also part of the revenue stream, depending on how much the department saves. So that's one of the new revenue streams for each department, is being able to save and collect that interest. And that's been an important thing because for the first 3 or 4 years I was here, the average interest rate that we got in our money market fund with the state was about 1.25%. Over the last year and a half, I'm not telling a banker anything he doesn't know. But we've had interest rate well above 5%. You kind of bump it around for a year and a half or so now. And so actually for this budget cycle for 23-25 going into the next biennium, this biennium actually earned quite a bit more interest than expected because of those interest rates on our reserves. And it was a very positive thing for us, but the importance of saving. So it came in time for taking advantage of advantageous interest rates for saving. And then here's just kind of an example of how the library has been saving money or saving money and then kind of moving it forward. you know, in this one particular year, the department actually saved about $13,000 and got to roll it forward instead of spending that $13,000 and counting on budgeting the same amount and more the following year. You know, use it or lose it, the department saved the money and rolled it forward and earned interest on it. By saving under this method and being able to account for that savings under this method. So about $20,000, a little over $20,000 were saved. And it just gives the library flexibility, kind of plan some things down the road a bit better. But the library is the best department for doing that. And I think Robin gets kudos for her management of the department, planning carefully, good relationships with the Washington County Library, the cooperative library system, understanding what's coming down the pike, planning for it, and working with the city on making sure that, you know, that we're nimble on things. And what's resulted is Robin has been very predictably bringing annual budget in below annual expenditures below budget and formally planning on savings year to year. And so that's really been an important tool for her. And if she wants to say anything else, she can, but it's kind of enabled her to very predictably budget.
Thank you.
There you
We
go.
said it.
There you go, Robin.
I need carpet, the library needs carpet, so.
Okay.
Spend some on that.
There we go. The library needs carpet. Okay, so here are the pie slices for FY 23-25. So this is for general fund departments. And when we add up all of those kind of unobligated general revenues that the general fund gets, and again, it's the big ones are property tax revenue, franchise fees, every resident who has an electricity account, you know, gas account, phone, cable, all that fun stuff. All those private utilities pay a percentage of their revenue generated in the city to the city as for ability to use our right of way. And we'll get into that in later city council meetings. But the bottom line is that's a significant general fund unrestricted revenue source. And then again, those shared revenues from the state for different alcohol tax and things like that. And we get a population-based portion of that goes into the general fund too. But in the 23-25 biennium budget, these were the identified pie slices by city council and adopted during the budget process. Public safety, we contract with Washington County Sheriff's Office. We have a contract with them that includes everything. From evidence storage to personnel to ammunition, training, everything, police cars, everything. That goes in, but it's public safety those are highly trained, highly qualified, specialized service that is not inexpensive. So that ends up for the general fund the revenues that come in for the FTEs that we've chosen to have. That ends up, has been 52% of unrestricted funds revenues for the general fund. The library comes in at 30%. It is kind of the most public facing department for the city in terms of providing firsthand services for the community. Public safety too, but on a daily basis, monthly basis, we get thousands of visits at the library. And so we've carefully staffed and budgeted for that to be an important public service for the community. And then the big ones after that, boards and commissions, that's expenses written for training, certifications, anything and everything having to do with city council, and all of our boards and commissions. The city recorder, keeping track of all that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Legal fees?
Legal fees, yes, legal fees spent on defining, refining, defending, all that fun stuff. Legal fees go into that as well. Community development, on the other hand, has only gotten about 2.5% of shared revenues. That department heavily relies on fees collected for land use applications and that sort of thing. So that department, more than any other, is really driven by incidental revenues it generates by the services it provides. And that's only fair because the city residents shouldn't have to fund the benefit of developers doing land use applications. They pay their way. So that's why community development is set up that way. Parks and Recreation is kind of in some ways what's left over. All of the other ones are kind of the musts and the needs, identified needs, and then have to do. We have to comply with land use planning. We have to provide public safety. Parks and Recreation at this point and to date has kind of been the leftover share of revenues, unrestricted revenues. And then finally, Finance and Administration, largely, that's finance, city manager and all that fun stuff. That doesn't get any kind of direct allocation from the general fund. We calculate a fee that each of the different departments, pays based on their staffing and all that fun stuff. So it's indirect revenue from the general fund, but it's kind of calculated based on the work that we do for the different departments.
Treated as a shared service center that then bills the other departments.
Yeah, I mean, the Finance and Administration Department, if we didn't have the Finance and Administration Department in the general fund, and which is kind of tough not to, if it wasn't in the general fund, it would be what's technically called an internal services fund. And we actually will be introducing a new internal services fund in the new budget, for building facilities and maintenance.
Okay.
Since all the departments benefit from the buildings and facilities we have and their proper repair and upkeep.
Yeah.
We're gonna treat that similarly to Finance and Administration in the new budget. That way, when you look at the general fund department budgets, you're looking really at the operations of what they do rather than how much lawn is mowed, how much, that stuff. Security, all that, those things. So the attempt is to try to, look, kind of budget and have the budget reflect things kind of in a more pure way from an operations standpoint. Any questions about this? This is the current biennium, not what's coming. Okay. So from there, I want to kind of dig in terms of the city council has kind of gone through over the past few weeks, went through enjoyed, whatever you want to call it, had a leadership retreat that discussed, kind of policy priority pillars for city operations and kind of service to the community. And then at the last city council meeting in a work session, council kind of came to agreement on some proposed budget priority language, and there are 8 of them. And so I just kind of want to walk through what we heard from council. The language might be tweaked and refined a little bit, but the council will adopt them by resolution. And so these the priority language here is being reflected in changes and, priorities and changes in the budget that will be released next week. The big one was expanded police coverage. You'll note we don't see a specific FTE because when you increase anything for any department, you necessarily affect other things. But council wanted to see as a high priority movement towards additional police coverage for safety in North Plains. So that's kind of one of the big ones that there was very little disagreement, or at least that was kind of an emphasis for everyone. Increased investment in the public works team and infrastructure. We have a water system.
We've got a question.
Yeah, sure.
I was probably more for the city council than it is for the budget meeting. But years ago, when we voted to go to Washington, to join with Washington County, I swear one of the biggest selling points was that the Washington County Sheriff provide providing extra coverage for when our police officers weren't there.
That's true.
So I know it's our priority, so maybe part of that priority is, did it change? Are we not getting what we paid for?
We are, the people want more.
Okay, I just want to.
Point of clarification, yes, they cover, but unless it's a, crime against person in progress, like a bird, like somebody breaking into your house or something, and you got them at gunpoint, that there's not enough deputies in the county. So this is a Washington County problem. This isn't us. They don't have the physical manpower. They hit all the little cities, so they're doing the best they can. We're just saying, based on what the community's feedback has been, is having giving
We want
chief
we
more.
want the guy driving around town.
Yeah, how were he managing that?
I guess when I voted for it back then, I took it as that was going to be part of it, that the sheriff is going to be having people on patrol to cover our crime rates when our guys weren't there.
Right, and
If
that,
they're having any problems, they
Well-
can't support that.
no, what you guys are talking about 2 different things.
Yeah.
You're asking about the amount of hours we have. Yes, if somebody's out on vacation or they get
Oh.
injured or they're on line leave or whatever, the sheriff will go back to the amount of hours we have paid for, are paid for. This is, we're wanting more.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not, because it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I think that when it first happened, it's there, but it seems to have ebbed off,
It's super expensive.
so, okay.
No, thank you, good question. Second priority, take care of and, move towards, strong standards for facilities and maintenance, of our infrastructure around town. That's a priority in terms of, how we're putting the budget together and kind of changing and expanding how we do things. It's important to keep in mind that the 23-25 budget that you see we've been working off of, and that's kind of been something Dustin and I have been working on is we didn't actually have a public works director at the time of the 23-25 budget. So Andy and I, the best Andy and I could do was kind of take what we've been doing and move it forward with the provision that we will have a public works director soon who can revisit all of this and kind of put some actual professional look into the budget and move things around. And that's very much what Dustin has been doing and has done in what we'll present next week. So, and that's also part of why we will be looking into we'll be proposing an internal services fund, just to be very clear about, you know, what we're doing and how we're budgeting for it. Proactively plan for North Plains' future, for fiscal responsibility and sustainable growth, so that all the plans and documents, really kind of support that and are consistent with it. Implement effective economic development programs that support. There was an emphasis on small businesses and then increasing the vibrancy of downtown and other commercial areas. And in North Plains, of course, that's Glencoe Road, businesses there. And by the way, just kind of a brief kind of promotion, but the EDC will actually be next week on Wednesday. We'll be hearing from the gentleman who built and owns the two new commercial buildings, retail buildings on Glencoe, where the new restaurants and new businesses are. And he's going to come in, and then Therese will be there as well. And the EDC will be discussing among them and themselves and kind of the beginnings of a plan to, you know, market the city and market opportunities in the city for businesses to help the business climate and attract, you know, new offerings, whether or not they're restaurants. So, you know, new businesses in town. So that's next week. So just to put that out there. Priority number 5, minimize resources dedicated to urban growth boundary expansion planning. There was a lot of discussion and agreement about, you know, a lot of planning and a lot of spending that had occurred in previous periods on urban growth boundary expansion planning. And this budget needs to ratchet that down and do things differently with its planning and community development dollars. So that's priority number 5. Enhance community services directly benefiting North Plains residents. So very much think the plan program there, particularly some kind of programming or parks programming. We, you know, like I said earlier, to date, we've only been able to treat that as leftover resources, not really make it a huge priority. Council would like to see some movement in terms of programs offering and budgeting for the city to be able to do that in a real way moving forward. So that's part of our planning as well. Increasing community development involvement and access through improved communication and connectivity. We're working through, and you'll see some budgeting and process put into kind of working towards probably some kind of new visioning or something that looks like it. The last time the community did a visioning process was 2015. It's been a long time. And so doing something new, probably in cooperation with DLCD, who tends to be the one to fund those big efforts. But that will be, you know, that among other things will be an emphasis in the budget. And then ensuring North Plains is a safe, affordable, and resilient community for residents. I think nobody would disagree with the need for all of that. But being safe, that kind of harkens back to the first priority regarding enhanced additional police presence in town, more hours each day during the week or into the evening or night. But just making sure all of that is a budget priority as well. Any questions about those? Okay, so I just have a few slides here to kind of give a summary of some things that are affecting the budget or things that are being worked into it, to factor or consider. The big thing, and there will be some exhibits in the budget, but the big thing is to remember or to see that North Plains is really kind of at this transition point in terms of where it is and how it's growing. And whether or not the UGB vote for expansion had been different than it is, or, you know, whatever, the city was, because of how long it takes to even do that sort of thing, the city either way was going to go into a transition period where the city was running low on buildable land, particularly for residential development. And so we are now entering that period that was going to happen no matter what with the UGB expansion. There's going to be a period of time where North Plains is going to grow far less year to year than it has been. Bryn Hill, the Lennar development, the Bryn Hill community has fully paid for all development fees, system development charges, transportation development tax, all those fees for the rest of the lots in that development, and they will be under construction over the summer. So by the end of 2025, the vast majority of, into 2026, Bryn Hill will be fully built out. And so what that means is that in this biennium, there are a lot of revenue streams that we will see no longer. System development, all the things that go into our capital funds to pay for projects, not operating expenses so much, but all the revenues that go into our capital funds and pay for our big capital projects, that flow of revenue is about to be shut off or down to a trickle. Because over the next few years, all we have are parcels here, parcels there, individual infill lots for homes, maybe some redevelopment here or there, and a little bit of industrial land left. So, that was gonna happen anyway, no matter what with the UGB. There's just a transition period when you approach, lower supply of land. And so there will be a change to how our revenue streams occur, particularly on the front end revenue streams from development. And population growth is going to be flatter as a result of that. One thing we are tracking, honestly, is just, we'll get more into the economy, but depending on the nature of economic turbulence that we seem to be heading into and the nature of the layoffs, like for instance, Intel, announced that corporate-wide a new round of up to 20% layoffs. And of course, our part of the region in particular is heavily concentrated in Intel employment. So that could be anywhere from just under 2,000 to a little over 4,000 jobs lost in the area. And again, it's kind of early on in that.
And that's direct layoffs. There is a tangent effect to people that service those areas as well.
Yes.
So with the ripple effects, thank you. So the ripple effects so that's just Intel itself. So anyway, we're tracking that, and we're watching other budgets that have been proposed. I mean, part of our process being a little bit later than usual, has kind of been more larger agency budgets in Washington County are beginning to, or have gone into a pattern of cutbacks annually, of cutting budget, and why. And just Monday, the county's proposed budget was released, so we've been reviewing that and kind of factoring in to make sure we're not kind of thinking about things the wrong way, given the broader county, the way it's thinking. There's just a lot of uncertainty about tariffs and economic shocks. News just came out this morning about the economy actually contracting the previous quarter a little bit, 0.8 or 0.5 or whatever it was. Yeah, so it was under 1%. The old definition of a recession was 2 quarters in a row of negative growth. It's kind of different now, but either way, it's early on. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of jarring news that about the economy and policies, I think, and it's created a lot of sense of instability. And then we really do have real Intel and other layoffs in the area. So in terms of risks to the city, in terms of budgeting, the highest probability thing is the city has to plan on realizing some, reduction or thinking about how modest to be if we do have a lot of layoffs. And right now, not a ton of homes for sale or vacant homes. That's kind of the way it's been for quite a while. But if we start seeing enough layoffs and then the indirect economic losses, like Commissioner Page said, we're talking about more vacant homes in North Plains potentially. that are sitting there, not buying water, not paying, nobody there with a phone and paying for power and that sort of thing, so our franchise revenues go down. Maybe households have a more challenging time paying their water bills, so we have delay in payments, that sort of thing. That's a bit more of a likely outcome, but if the economy really has problems, like sort of like Bend did back in the late, in the mid 2000s with the Great Recession. That's a case where if the economy is so bad that the housing market is so negatively affected, the county assessor will reassess property values down based on loss in market value. And what that means is lower across the board assessed value, no matter what tax rate we pass or whatever local option levy rate this community passes, if it were to do that, your base taxable assessed value being brought down is a very real problem from a budgeting perspective. It's not considered, it's considered a quite low probability at this point, but it's worth saying that's kind of the range of what could happen over a biennium with economic weakness. There's no indication that this is going to be that bad, but we should also always say, there's no guarantee that our taxable assessed value in this city is going to remain stable and grow every year. That's not a guarantee. So just worth saying. Any questions about any of that? Okay. Budget cuts. The state's lost quite a bit of money due to federal funding issues. Of course, the state has a biennial kicker every year that grows because of the way the state budgets. So you'll probably see the state think differently about making up for some of the federal funding and some of those things. So we'll see how that transitions out. But the state's been the one that's borne the brunt of a lot of the federal funding cuts in the new administration. We as a city are not vulnerable to that. The only thing we've had in terms of federal funding lately that we were concerned about being vulnerable to, and Dustin did the work with the state on assuring it, but the generator for the new Kimball Public Services Building and Emergency Operations Center was paid for with a grant from the state of federal FEMA funds. Now, the state took those funds in and assured the grant to us of federal funds. So it's not something we're dealing directly with the feds and the risk of a cut. The state is assured the money to fully pay that off. So, but that's kind of our only current like direct federal funds vulnerability, and that's not going to be an issue for us. So just to kind of be clear about that. They're a larger agency, probably other things, but not North Plains. Washington County is cutting a little over $20 million from its annual budget this year. Most counties in Oregon, 60%, as a matter of fact, are expecting budget cuts this year. City of Beaverton, $10 million shortfall. At least 1/3 of Oregon cities are reporting gaps in general fund budgets. Andy will text occasionally and talking about this. And I'm like, well, hey, you're getting paid the big bucks over in Beaverton. You can figure it out, buddy.
That's for the short.
So anyway, so again, North Plains is growing. There's a cycle of revenue that's going to come in as a result of the growth we've realized. Property taxes come in later, after things are built and people move in and people get a tax bill and people pay their tax bill after they get it. There is a delay in revenues that cities get, counties get in property taxes after the fact. So for about 1.5 to 2 years, a city's major source of revenue tends to be safe. It's just the problem after that when things get hit. But we're not looking at the same types of problems that Beaverton and Washington County and other cities have been. Hillsborough, on the other hand, is not cutting anything specifically, but they do identify kind of economic and revenue risks. But if you look at the budget for Washington County and Beaverton, every city, every county that levies property taxes has the same risk. Just some places have been more hit by it than others, and that's Measure 50. That's our property tax system, year to year. The most a property tax bill on your property tax bill can go up if you don't personally, if a vote isn't approved to add some new tax onto it, the most your own property tax bill can go up in a year is 3% by state law. Okay. Unless you are in an agency, a district that approved a new school bond or approved a new whatever. But if it's the same tax rate as the prior year, your property tax bill can't go up by more than 3%. Costs to agencies in very good years go up by 3% or less. I can tell you right now, certain costs, we aren't a union city, some agencies that we work with or costs that we have to deal with, do have different cost functions that every year guaranteed are well over 3%. That's just how it is. That's how we have to budget to deal with. So Measure 50 from the get-go is a problem. And so Washington County and the city of Beaverton are really kind of not early victims, but they're kind of the more prominent ones. But most cities, because of that difference over time, it catches up with it. You can't outrun Measure 50. So you kind of have to plan and try to do things to deal with it. But that's kind of the status with that. So we'll talk more about that when we talk numbers. Any questions about any of those things? And then I'm just gonna open it up to general questions because that's kind of, sorry for the lecture, but that's just kind of things we wanted to cover. I guess, you probably want to decide about your, when you want to have kind of focused public comment, if you want to focus public comment at any particular meeting or meetings.
Yeah.
But besides that, we're open to, general questions or questions about anything.
Commissioner Goodwin?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Papen. Commissioner Goodwin, you patiently listened to all that and hopefully things are going well there. Did you have any questions or comments?
She sounds riveted.
That's the typical response.
Perfect. So yeah, we do need to come to consensus as far as public comment for the first meeting. So my thought on that is I will entertain a motion to include public comment on the first agenda of our of the budget committee. And then we will open up to discussion. That way we're just keeping this rolling. We can all get home to our families.
So May 15th, correct?
May 15th. So the
And will
motion,
we allow public comment on May 15th or also May 22nd?
no, it would be.
May-
It's back on.
Yep, get your thoughts.
May 15th
And
15th.
also the 22nd?
and the 22nd.
Okay.
I make a motion that we do not allow public comment on May 15th. So that we can go through the budget cleanly. And then open for comments for the other budget meetings.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to not include public comment at the May 15th. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Dunn Brown. Do we have discussion on the floor?
Do we, yes,
Wait, we're gonna keep it organized. Commissioner Papen first, please.
Thank you. I just want to be reflective of the opinion we heard earlier as well from Commissioner Goodwin about trying to get as much community involvement as possible. I also hear, the other side of that we are also digesting the information at the same time, so there might be little value. So I would just also consider a compromise, and could we allow public comment at that May 15th meeting, but limit it to 1 minute for each speaker?
Okay, do we have let's go continue with comment and then we'll come back to it. Commissioner Page?
I think that the first meeting, people should have a chance to voice their opinions before things get rolling. Let them say, hey, I'm really looking forward to these things. When you guys are looking at it, I think the first meeting is important. I do realize our time is valuable. But we have to do all the work for everybody else inside the city. So we have to I think we have to bite the bullet on this one and allow comment on the first and second one.
Commissioner?
I am in favor of allowing comment, but I'm also in favor of controlling the amount of time that takes because it is a very long process to go through page by page of the budget. So, I think we could restrict public comment to a certain total amount of time. A lot of times I see it restricted to 15 minutes of public comment, or 30 minutes of public comment. And if it's, 3 minutes, and if it's beyond that, you need to submit it in writing or, whatever that might be, so that we can still take comment. It doesn't mean that it all has to be in that public moment, so that we have a scheduled time for it versus just open until it ends. So that's sort of where I'm thinking about in terms of discussion.
I'm gonna go, Commissioner Hurst.
I agree that we do need to have public comment but at that first meeting, and I'm speaking from many years of experience. This is what we have to go through at that first meeting, this whole thing. the public can comment about this in writing at any point during our discussion. As soon as the budget is released on May 8th, they can comment on any of this. But all we're going to be doing is going through the document to understand it. And it won't be until the 22nd that we're even going to discuss specific departments. So that's the reason that I feel that I think public comment should be held or not held at the first meeting, but welcome it at the second meeting after all this has been digested by the committee.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share my thoughts and then I'll go to you, Counselor, or Commissioner Page. My thought is, one, it was said in the PowerPoint at the very beginning, we are not a policy-making board. And so my concern is that public comments made before the budget is gone through, reviewed, will be policy-focused comments, which this body is not a policy-making body. We are a procedural body. So my comment would be a compromise of public comment if we allow it at the first meeting. It is after we've gone through the document, so that way those comments, those public comments are geared towards the information that we are actually reviewing, not policy comments that we do not have an impact on. We are a procedural body, that they are actually just to the actual content that was delivered that night. So I would say a happy compromise would be moving public comment to the end. So that way, those that want to come, review the information and make their public comments so they don't have to come back to the next meeting, have the opportunity to do that then.
So I think I like the spirit of compromise. I think maybe that's something we can also add to the committee rules, that comments need to be, well, first of all, limits, but also maybe not policy comment, trying to think how to phrase it. Yeah, not policy comments, but very specific to what's in the budget. And if not, we kind of need to be firm but polite in making sure that we stay on task, because again, Commissioner Hurst's point, this is. Oh,
Well, let's do it this way. I call for the question.
Well, first, let's, what's gonna happen is, this is like our city council meetings, there's a large contingency that's very well organized. And they're gonna come in and they wanna kill growth, so they're gonna say anything about budget and staffing and just kill the current. They wanna kill growth, try to, take everything out of the budget for like any kind of like, expansion, maybe get rid of people that are currently sitting here in staff or whatever, right? So there's gonna be a lot of that talk going on. And I wanna let them have the chance to have a say, so they don't say later on like, hey, you stomped this out.
Yeah.
So I wanna make sure that, this organized group of people, have their, get to have their say in it.
Commissioner.
I like the spirit of compromise also, and I like the idea of opening public comment to the budget presentation that was presented. So that if you've read the budget, we all get it on the 8th, community gets it on the 8th as well. And that, you come in and you see the presentation and you have public comment at the end, that's a way to do that, but to limit that to 3 minutes, and anything longer has to come in written or submitted another way.
Perfect. We've heard great comment. We have a first and second on the floor, and the current motion is to not allow public comment at May 15th. So I'll call for a vote now. All in favor of not having public comment at the May 15th budget, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Say nay. Nay. All right, so we've got that down. I will entertain a motion to have public comment restricted to 1 minute at the end of the presentation on the May 15th Budget Committee meeting.
I will second that.
Well, I was entertaining a motion.
Oh, you're at the motion, you're on the motion. I'll make a motion that, we allow public comment at the end of the May 15th budget meeting, limited to 1 minute based upon, budget discussions of that day.
I'll second. Any discussion on the floor?
I'd like to consider amending that, so it doesn't say budget discussion on that day. So if someone read the budget, they saw something in it, and they're waiting till the end to talk, that they still could say something. But then it
I'd
has to be
also-
on the budget.
And limited to 1 minute.
What would that
Commissioner
be?
Goodwin?
I'd like to say that asking people to hold their comments to the end when this is a meeting that is hours long is not reasonable public access, and that I feel we need to be very cautious with anything that is a barrier to people's First Amendment rights and disenfranchising our community.
Thank you. Then we had an amendment to the motion. How do we document an amendment to a motion?
So we just second. Discuss on that.
Okay.
To go backwards.
Perfect. So let's, do we have a second to the amendment to the motion to restrict to remove the language regarding the budget? Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. what you're saying.
Ask for clarification.
Yeah,
So
so
let's clarify.
So
Commissioner,
the motion was to move the public comment, since this is a budget presentation, to move the public comment to the end of the presentation and restrict it to 1 minute. That doesn't stop written comment or anything else. And to, the other part was, and that it had to be on the budget presentation. And I asked that we amend it by removing the language on the budget presentation. So it would be amending it to 1 minute after public comment, 1 minute after the budget presentation.
I'll second that.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Concise is gonna be.
So,
Okay.
in my argument then is, if it's not restricted to the budget presentation. And we're trying to be equitable. Then what does it matter if it's 1 minute at the beginning versus 1 minute at the end? We're still here for this, I mean, the same amount of.
I'm sorry, I have trouble hearing.
Sorry, I was saying if we're not making it only be about the presentation, it could be about whatever they wanted to speak about.
Oh, yeah.
No. Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I want to make sure I'm summarizing your thoughts correctly. It was not just about the budget presentation, correct? You wanted them
It's
to.
about the budget document and the presentation together. So it's not just about the presentation.
But
But it's not
It's all
about
about
the general, this is what you should make your priorities for budgeting, or any other thing that should be taken to council and not the budget committee. Budget committee doesn't deal with that policy, council does.
Okay.
So I'm trying to clarify that in that amendment.
Yep.
Again,
Was that clear?
sorry.
Commissioner Hurst, you had.
No, I just was wanting to make sure I understood
Okay.
what we were talking about. And that's having it at the end of the presentation. Is that what
That's
I'm
correct.
understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
So they gives you the presentation. So
Yeah, you have to go through the presentation in order to take comments on the presentation.
well, there's 30
But the
minutes.
amendment that is also, but just related to the budget document,
Yeah.
not just the presentation that.
Yeah.
Perfect, all right. So we have it first and seconded. It is. Unless there's any other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
I-
All opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, the motion carries. Do we have anything else for the good of the order? It is 7:40 and we're at the end of our agenda. Commissioner Pippin, you tabled something. Did we cover it?
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Okay.
For the chair, was it, I'm sorry, is it rules today or next time? Oh, but-
That's my question as
oh,
well.
sorry.
So I felt like, you know, the committees that we have in the city and the council itself have adopted specific rules of order and operations that you're even using tonight. And that I would, you know, wonder if we wouldn't want to move forward using those same rules within the budget committee.
I will entertain a motion to use the existing rules, meeting rules that we have in place for the city for the budget committee moving forward.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
I'll second.
It's messy,
Whatever
but you
it
guys
is.
got it. First and seconded, any discussion?
Just a quick clarification. Are we aligned on the time frame for how long we're allowing public comment for the budget committee?
We had 1 minute as
1
the
minute.
motion, yeah.
And I just want to clarify, because I think for other boards and commissions, it might be 3 minutes.
It's three.
It's three.
Great.
So I just wanted to clarify.
So do we need to amend the motion?
Yeah, amend the motion with the exception of public comment.
Point of clarification, the city council rules do not indicate that public comment is 3 minutes long. It can be up to 5 minutes long. It's up to the discretion of the mayor and
At
city
the,
council
at the meeting, right?
at the meeting.
It's
Based,
up to discretion of the meeting,
Yeah.
of the chair.
so if attendance and comment volume is
Oh, I-
huge, the time can be restricted.
Got
So we wouldn't need the motion is what I'm hearing.
it. We would not.
And we may want to open it up to 3-minute comment on the second meeting.
Yeah.
So there's already
absolutely.
second,
Chair.
so now what?
So then the motion stays.
Yep, motion stays the same.
Alright,
All right, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Do we have anything else?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you, Chair.
Yes.
The other thing I would point out is you as a body can choose to change the meeting schedule. And there may be a suggestion to do so, out there. Commissioner Goodman. But either way, staff put together this schedule based on meeting certain dates, but things can be moved. Ultimately, remembering that, council needs to adopt a budget by June 30th. And B, council has the power to call special meetings. That are not first and third Mondays of the month. So there is some flexibility in there if this body chooses to change things.
My recommendation would be to move forward. But Commissioner Goodwin?
Thanks, Bill. So I have an unavoidable conflict on the May 22nd meeting. At this point, I don't have strong feelings either way. It would certainly be preferential for the mayor to be able to attend the budget meetings, but if you guys are not able to accommodate that, then I will simply submit my input in a different written format.
Is there,
Vicky?
is there a proposed date instead that would work?
Bill, you'll have to refresh my memory, but I believe we were looking at the 19th or the 20th as an alternative.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Goodwin. So, in an email, the mayor, asked as alternative dates, could Monday the 19th, which is a city council meeting, or Tuesday the 20th, be alternate dates. So I think those would be the ones to at least initially throw out there. The 19th is a city council meeting, so I don't know about that conflict because there are agenda items. My only concern about either of those days, ignoring it being a council meeting night or not, is that would be what, 2 business days, 4 total days to turn around response to comments on all of this. So I just, from a practicality standpoint, it would be tough to be thorough if those were the dates. If one of those was the new date for the second meeting. But again, I would just emphasize that council needs to adopt this budget by the 30th. And council also has the ability to call meetings that are in addition to or different from the first and third Monday of the month. So there is flexibility with regard to the date when, for instance, adoption we're scheduling adoption to be done on the 2nd. It could be done at the second regular meeting with the fee schedule, which is normally traditionally done on the second meeting. That could also be the night of budget adoption. So there's flexibility in there is the bottom line.
My schedule is free on the 20th. If anybody wants to move it up. It'd be kind of hard, but
I'll make a motion to move it from the 22nd to the 20th.
let's do discussion first.
Perfect. I'm free on the 20th, I already checked.
You free on the 20th?
Yep.
Ariel, you free on the 20th?
20th works for me. Thank you so much.
How does that impact, doing the work between whatever happens the night of the 15th, which is a Thursday, and then for us to be back in on Tuesday to then go through all the changes and comments, so,
It's a lot.
I mean, even in digesting it, she was thinking.
Yeah.
So, how does that impact staff? I guess I want to hear it.
Well, so there is a council meeting Monday the 19th that we would also have to be prepared for, and then the following. So it's not, Like, there are not 4 uninterrupted days of of efforts leading up to, there is a city council meeting, that's work. So, I mean, I'll just say, if it has to be on the 20th, that from a staff perspective can be lived with, but that's not a lot of time. And given that you have until, council has until June 30th, frankly, I think my recommendation would be move it back, not forward.
Well, we're already on time. I would say either direction creates a lot
Well,
of challenges.
can I ask what kind of, impact Commissioner Goodman it would have on you to, submit your comments in writing or however it comes into us, so that, you know, knowing that we would work with those comments and changes as well. I'm just trying to figure out, there's 14 people and several staff, so how does that, so what kind of impact does that have on you? And I know you're in a difficult situation right now.
Appreciate you. Yeah, it's not ideal, certainly. You know, missing being part of discussion and any dynamic conversation that was happening, as well as not being able to vote. I would be curious if we did go ahead and keep the session on the 22nd, what opportunities there might be for proxy vote or for me to vote in a different format. That would be more of a concern than the submitting
Ultimately,
comments in writing.
Council.
It'll go to council to vote. Yeah, so
Yeah.
ultimately, Commissioner Goodwin, it would go to council to adopt and vote on it that. So it would not, there's no adoption or voting taking place in the budget committee on that day.
It could be.
Well, there could be, because that is, I believe, the earliest date that it could be adopted, which was my initial concern. As I said, this is a large group of people and an important body of work. I am certainly not insisting that this change be made, but there certainly impact both directions.
Thank you. Yeah, so it would be approved. We don't do any adoption here. So that's important to remember, but
Thank you for the question.
the other thing is that we also have the 29th on the schedule already as a third meeting for potential approval. So, you know, it could be that if we get to that point on the 22nd and we're ready to approve it, and we meet on the 29th to do that.
Yeah, it could be
Or
very
that
short.
more likely that we still have some discussion and we're going to do it on the 29th anyway for that approval. So that's another thought in terms of, you know, whether we reschedule everything or not.
No, I think that's a very valid point. It's on the schedule. It could be come to essentially discussion, and then we move forward with the vote on the 29th. So that way, Commissioner Goodwin is included.
And I
I'm
have
certainly
every-
more comfortable with that. I appreciate the suggestion.
I have every faith in Chris being able to herd cats, but this body has had a history of
Big cats.
doing nothing, so. Good.
So should we hold the course with what's proposed? I'm looking around there, it just looks like consensus. I don't think we need a motion for this, do we, Lori?
No.
Okay, we'll hold the course with the meeting schedule. Perfect. Bill, any other points?
I think that was the
I
plan.
add one thing. So it's very small. I mean, I had heard in the community, and I know there's been talk at council and other places about, you know, this being very rushed and we're very short on time and we're at the last minute. And I thought, oh no, I'm a little concerned too now if I'm hearing that. So I went back and looked at when the meetings happened before. And so they ran from April 19th to May 24th for the last biennium budget. So this time, you know, it's starting essentially today, but really on the 8th, May 8th and running to the 29th. So although it feels like that because we're in that moment right now, we're not really far off when I look back at it. And so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Perfect. Hearing no other comment, nothing else. It's 7:50, meeting adjourned.